Right, everybody, let's get started. Good morning or good afternoon or good evening, wherever you are in the world. I'm in Bangkok, where it's 4 p.m. And welcome to the latest eRoam webinar. Today, Resourcing for Recovery, Preparing Your Travel Team for Operation Restart. Previously, we've talked about digital marketing, we've talked about technology, we've talked about post-COVID recovery. Today, we're doing a slightly different topic, and we're talking about HR issues. And I'm delighted to be joined today by an old friend of mine and someone I'm sure many of you know, Mr. Scott Coates. Welcome, Scott.
Hey there, Tim, and hello to everybody around the world listening. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Great you could join us. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We're probably going to take around 35 to 40 minutes. We are recording the webinar, so if you suddenly have to leave early, or you just think it's so fantastic you want to watch it again, then we'll be sending you a link to the recording in the next couple of days. If you look at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you'll see a little Q&A box, or at the top, I'm not quite sure where it is if you're an attendee. If you've got any questions at any point, just click on that and ask them. We'll either wait till the end or we'll ask them in the middle of the event if they're relevant. There's also a chat window as well, so if you have any problems connecting to us, if my screen disappears or if you can't hear us anymore, then please let us know in the chat window. Right, let's get started. Just a quick introduction. My name's Tim Russell. I'm Commercial Director Southeast Asia for eRoam, based in Bangkok. We're a technology company with a technology solution aimed at travel agents, travel advisors, tour operators, and DMCs. And I'll be showing you a short video about eRoam later. And as I said, with me is Scott Coates, who was one of the original co-founders of Bangkok tour operators Smiling Albino, and is now a people development specialist. And he's going to be talking today about basically getting your staffing, getting your HR ready for when we have the inevitable recovery from COVID. I've been saying inevitable for about a year now, but we do still believe that it's inevitable. Before I let Scott take over, just a little bit of background. I mean, you know all this stuff anyway, and we talk about this in all our webinars, but here's a look at how the COVID pandemic affected tourism in Southeast Asia last year. We can see that all the main countries in Southeast Asia are dramatically down. Indonesia 75% down, up to Singapore 85.7%. And so far it's been the same story in 2021. And of course that has had a big effect on the travel industry jobs market. This is estimated job losses in the travel industry worldwide. So estimated about 100 million jobs lost, which is about a third of the industry's workforce, and the majority of those have come in Asia Pacific. As Scott will confirm, Thailand has suffered particularly badly. A lot of tour companies have closed down or are temporarily mothballed. We don't know when travel is going to recover here. We don't know to what level companies are going to be rehiring staff, but that's something that Scott's going to talk to us about. Here's a forecast from McKinsey on when they think travel is likely to recover to its 2019 levels. They think it could take to 2023 just for domestic, 2022, sorry, just for domestic to recover. Outbound, we think, is probably going to take a lot longer than that as countries are slow to roll out the vaccine. So I'm going to hand over to Scott just so he can introduce himself, tell you more about himself, and tell you what he's going to be talking about today.
Thanks, Tim, and thank you again to everyone that's made time out of your busy days or evenings, depending where you are, to join us. In addition to what Tim just shared, mornings as well. As addition to what Tim just shared, I'm originally from Canada, from Western Canada, from Calgary, but I've been living in Southeast Asia since 1999, worked in most of the countries in the region, as well as a bit of work in China, Japan, and Nepal. I recently became an MMS certified coach, and I'm currently working towards International Coaching Federation certification later this year. I'm trained in emergent facilitation from an organization called DSIL, and I've also done a couple longer longer courses with Delivering Happiness. They are an offshoot of Zappos, the online shoe company from America. And they had such popular happiness and culture programs and models within their organization that they opened a consultancy devoted to this. And I've studied with them a bit. And then I'm also a professional in Human Resources International, certified from Human Resources International. So that's a little bit about my recent accreditations and so forth.
Good. So you're just the man to talk to us about these topics today, then.
Hopefully. And actually, my experience from this, I've been building people teams my entire professional career, but I really got the great opportunity to do it more formally when I joined XO Travel in 2016, helping them start an internal training department, delivering annual development programs around all their 10 countries they do business. And then I moved into the director of people position, which saw me working with HR teams in 10 countries, and sort of spiraled from there my interest. And now I'm fully focused on it.
Okay, so this is the agenda today. You just want to tell us a little bit what you're going to be talking to us about, Scott?
Sure. Anything I lead, I like to tell people, don't try and remember it all. Try and come up with 1 to 2 points that sort of excite you, resonate. And if you can remember something and then learn a bit more or put 1 or 2 of these into action, then I think you're winning. So we're going to start by talking about some items to keep in mind when we're attracting talent, then the real importance of onboarding properly, how we should definitely be paying attention to our company culture and the values and things that go along with that. Think a bit about how we're doing the work we do post-COVID, then also where this work is going to happen, because it's going to be changed forever. And then we'll wind things up with a bit of a recap, talking about some wins and the bottom line moving forward. And I could really talk about any of these for the whole length of one webinar. So this is just kind of a broad strokes exercise, and I'm happy to speak with anyone after further about any of these.
Yeah, we could probably do a whole day conference on this topic, couldn't we? But we've got about 35, 40 minutes, so we'll be whizzing through it. As I said before, we are recording this, so if you want to come back to it at a later date, you'll be able to. I'll send you the link. So we're going to talk about attracting talent. We know a lot of companies, probably some of you here today have probably had to let quite a lot of people go. And you'll now be thinking about recovery and whether you need to start hiring people and how you go about that. So Scott, how do you think companies should go about hiring new talent and attracting new talent if they decide, when the time is right for them to do so?
Yeah, thanks. Good question, Tim. There's no magic bullet on this. I think the first thing, most of the things I'm going to talk about today, I think can be really done during this slower COVID period when you maybe don't have as much work on your plate. Start by just thinking about your structure. I mean, look at your current org chart and all the people you used to have on staff and who did what. And then consider, do you really need, after rebound, do you need all those people, or do you need them in those roles, or should they report in that particular way? And design a new org chart. It might look the exact same, but I'll bet you it'll probably look different, because think of this as an opportunity to start again. And then think about the hires you'll eventually have to make. Who would those first tier of hires be? And then the second ones, who would those second ones report to? And how would those people work together? And then how would those teams work together? So I think if you take a bit of time to reimagine your structure, it'll help you with the hiring. And one of the comments I hear from a lot of people, and it makes sense in this industry, is that one of the good things about rebound will that there will be so much talent looking for work. I want to turn that on its head, though, a little bit and say that you're not going to be alone in trying to find talent. And there's going to be everyone in the travel industry trying to hire those great people at the same time and at a much accelerated pace from how we usually hire. So
there'll be fewer companies looking for that talent as well, because obviously a lot of companies have folded during the pandemic as well. So.
Yeah, very, very good point, Tim. So what everyone should be thinking about is defining your employee value proposition, or EVP. And what this really means is it's just how you promote your company, how you speak to your company when you're hiring. I think gone are the days where people would line up for a job and the person doing the hiring was completely in the driver's seat. You want to attract great people, so you need to clearly communicate to them what your company is, what makes it different, why it's a great place to work, what are the benefits, why would someone want to work there? And there's a lot of elements that define that EVP that we'll go into, but know it, be able to communicate it clearly and effectively when you get to hiring.
Cool. you're going to talk a little bit more about that on this slide. I think this looks like an adaptation of Maslow's hierarchy for me.
Yeah, you're on it, Tim. Exactly. So this is Maslow's classic pyramid, but it kind of looks at elements that people look for in a career. And that's that, compensation and benefits, those are no longer the most important things. And if you read any workplace surveys from anyone from McKinsey or PwC or Deloitte, you've got to be in line compensation wise with your industry and have those benefits. But the millennials and the Gen Zs, they're not just looking for that 20-year career, and they don't just place value on the compensation. So you've got to hit that bottom base. But where you should really be focusing on your communication when you're hiring is what's the experiential element to that job, meaning well-being, which just factored in Deloitte's 2020 workplace survey as one of the top rated items. How will people have a sense of well-being and also be able to manage a good, healthy work life when they're at work? And when it comes to career, people aren't staying as long in jobs, but they want to be learning and developing and getting feedback. Those are the two most highly rated elements by Gen Z and millennials when they're in a job, is they want to be learning and developing, and they want to be getting regular feedback. So making sure you're able to communicate that you do that, but also how you do it, and make sure it's true. With any of these EVP items, you don't want to say you do something. For example, we love the environment and we promote it all year, and then people join your company and find out you only plant trees once a year. Whatever you're going to promote, make sure it's real. But through this learning and development and mentorship and having healthy workplaces, you want to eventually be working towards the purpose at the top of this work pyramid. And that takes a lot of elements put together, but ultimately you want people to form an emotional connection with your business, be engaged, understand what their role in the business is and how it contributes to the end user, and have a real sense of purpose.
In your experience, has the travel industry been good at this, or is the travel industry sort of behind the rest of the other industries when it comes to this?
Very good question, Tim. I think especially in developing countries, even 5 years ago, a job in travel was one of the best games in town. But now, as developing countries develop, you now have banks and you have insurance companies that can beat us on salary. So I do think the travel industry needs to get a lot more creative about how you career plan for people, how you actually see them continually develop, and offer some of the perks and benefits that we maybe haven't, that are low cost but high wins. So I definitely think travel does need to be more conscious about this.
Okay.
So I'm not going to go into this in super detail, but here's the traditional 5 elements that make up your employee value proposition. Now, compensation is important. I did say that millennials and Gen Zs don't place the greatest importance on it, but of course, make sure it's competitive, make sure it's fair, make sure that people know timelines for increments, promotions, etc. Benefits. I think this is one that we all need to get really creative with. Now, you're not going to beat the banks and the insurance companies. You're probably not going to be able to provide, free snacks and all these things, but where can you win? And the wins are things that are going to appear further in our talk here. And they're things like flexible working hours. They're things like the ability to work remotely and avoid long, lengthy, time-wasting commutes. It might be being more flexible, that, hey, if you've got employees that they'd like to be able to pick up their kids at 3 p.m., but they can still get the work done, let them do it. If you can start to provide teeth cleaning once a year at a nominal cost, those little things can have great value. And with a lot of
companies have discovered, I think, during COVID, that they can be more flexible in terms of working hours and working from home, and not have their business suffer.
Absolutely. And if you even say come up with a little amount of benefit you can offer per year and give people a choice, so say a suite of 8 things to choose from. One person might choose a gym membership or a partial compensation. Somebody else might choose a pair of eyeglasses, but have that flexible. And then the middle one to me is the biggest win. And thinking about a way that, how can you help someone's career be as good as it can during the time it's there? And that's showing them that development path, giving the opportunities to learn. And that could be in the form of mentorship programs. It could be in training programs led by the company itself or outsiders. It could even be by setting up language opportunities. E.g., you have a German employee in your office who's willing to teach German to some of the staff. And maybe your business is in Vietnam and you have some Vietnamese staff that'll teach Vietnamese to the foreigners. Find those wins again that don't necessarily need to cost a ton of cash. You can also get memberships online for learning resources. It doesn't have to be expensive. And then, of course, ensuring you've got safe, comfortable work environments. We're going to talk about where the work's done. And I don't think that ping pong tables and flashy offices will hold quite the importance they did. Yeah. And then the big one is the culture. And this is the one that takes time and a lot of effort to slowly cultivate over time. People tend to leave jobs, one, for their managers. They don't like the manager. And two, the culture is not good. So culture generally can be done for close to free, but it takes a lot of little elements done over a long period of time with a lot of care and attention.
Okay. Let's move on to your next slide. So this is quite a complicated looking little chart here about onboarding. Until you explained it, I had no idea how it works. So do you want to just talk us through this slide about onboarding, Scott?
Sure. And this one, believe it or not, is the least complicated of the ones I could find. This talks about employee lifetime value. So once you've found that great staff member and you've hired them, you want to think as an employer, how can I get as much value from that employee over the time with us? So what this graph represents is from horizontally is time with the company, left to right, and vertically output. So the higher up number you go, the more that they're actually doing and delivering. The light colored green represents just an average hire. You hire, you do a so-so job onboarding, maybe you don't train them a whole lot, and you can see that they stick around for a while, they sort of plateau quite quickly, and then they slowly leave the company. Whereas if you do really good hiring, you do great onboarding, you end up with better people who more quickly understand the company, what the company does and why, their role within the company, how to do their job, the tools to do their job. And then you can see as you get to the hiring point, they slowly, if you give them good management and development, they continue to learn throughout their career. And all that darker green is the extra output, the extra value they deliver to their employer. And then what tends to happen at the end is when they do decide to leave, it's much quicker, which is better for an employer too. You don't want employees sticking around that's not happy. So onboarding, hiring effectively, good management and development mixed with great management and culture can increase that employee lifetime value by up to 300%.
Wow. Okay. So tell us a little bit more about onboarding, what things are involved in onboarding.
Yeah, so I was lucky enough in my last couple of years at Exo Travel to work quite heavily on onboarding and improving our onboarding systems, which were already pretty good. But with some small things like ensuring that you have training teams in place to actually coach people and teach them how to do their jobs. And that can be in the form of manuals and SOPs and e-learnings, but couple that with daily, weekly, monthly check-ins. And those would naturally be with managers, but you should also pair people up with buddies and mentors that work within their teams or maybe separate job or similar job functions, and make sure people have very clear weekly and monthly lists of what they're supposed to do and learn and achieve, especially in that probation period. And then in their 6 months and 1 year beyond that, that can be done with simple KPRs or OKRs, but make sure you have those in place. People want to know what they're responsible for, what they should be learning, and how they're being evaluated. On the top right, you'll see hire slowly, release quickly. I think when rebound happens, we're going to probably have to hire faster than we should. But having some of these people systems in place will help us do this. But one of the best things I think you can do is not be scared to release someone. I think we've all been in that position where someone just doesn't feel right. If you've actually given them a chance and you've mentored them and given them these KPIs and it just doesn't feel right, you're better to let them go, because you'll see right below that poor recruitment can actually cost up to 250% of an annual salary. So that means the time you spent and the money you spent recruiting, but also the time and money teaching that person and all the people that have to teach that person. So if you end up with a bad hire and you stick with them too long, it can actually end up costing you up to 250% of that hire's salary. And again, effective onboarding could get you up to 300% greater employee lifetime value. And then the last one here is especially when we're working remotely, and probably will continue to, as we'll speak more about later here, is what replaces your water cooler chat? How do you ensure that these new hires are actively and regularly connecting with people, not only talking about their job, but forming strong personal connections?
Okay. How do you suggest that companies replace water cooler chat? Because obviously that's something that some people miss at the moment. We're working from home. I'm at home all day just with 3 dogs, so my conversational skills have deteriorated over the last year. Right. I just talk to my dogs all day. How do you go about kind of replacing that or finding a replacement for things like that?
Very good question, Tim. I think one, it starts with establishing little regular meetings. Meetings don't have to be 1-hour affairs. You could set up with teams that, hey, everybody meet on Tuesday and Thursdays for 15 minutes and share what's going on. It starts with that. It also could have running some remote trainings where people have the opportunity to learn more about one another. One of the best stats I learned from delivering happiness is that they found consistently that people with the greatest number of connections and the depth of connections tend to be the most engaged, happy employees. So if you can find creative activities, I know we're all kind of tired of Zoom, but they don't have to be long, but you have some creative, even games, some social hours where people have the chance to not only talk with their direct teammates, but maybe people in other countries and locations, and even just have some casual get to know you. You want to work at people forming those connections through little meetings, you could have a coffee hour, again, establish little meetings within teams, all these little things.
Now, you said probably one of the most difficult things for companies to do is to not just establish a company culture, but also make it clear to employees what that culture is. So you're going to tell us a little bit about that now.
Yeah, and I assume that everybody here on the call has probably been a key person in developing your company's culture. So we all know culture doesn't just happen overnight. It takes a long time. But I think a good starting point, especially in COVID times, is get some of the people that are still on your team that you still have with you and revisit your values. Are your company values actually values that still stand today? Things have changed a lot. Are they values that your employees and all team members actually believe in, and they understand what they mean? And can you connect those values to your day-to-day work? So often a lot of companies create a bunch of values and they're on the wall somewhere, but if you asked employees to name them, they can maybe name 1 or 2. So often I think having any more than 4 values, you're probably having too many. You want people to actually remember them. You want them to definitely mean something, be real, and be things that with a bit of training, people could connect to their everyday work. So start with re-examining your values as a company, ensuring that when rebound happens, you've got values that all your current team members know, understand, agree on, have helped tune up, but then you're really able to train those new incoming people on what those are. And incoming employees and your existing ones, think about having some personal values exercises. There's lots online, and running some little sessions where you help people identify their personal values and find ways to connect those to company values. If people can connect a personal value to a company value, again, their engagement levels tend to go way up. Make sure that people, your current teams, again, and incoming, really understand their job and its impact on the end user and its impact on their teams. If people don't understand the importance of their role and how it impacts teams, coworkers, and ultimately that end user, their engagement and passion goes way down. And then the last one is, I think every company should look at getting culture teams and a plan in place. Now, what this means is just like your party planning committees or other committees, you might have a social welfare committee, an environmental committee, maybe led by HR and top management, is think about some events, not just parties, but things you would actually want to do throughout the year to promote company mission, vision, values, and when you're going to do that throughout the year, and then brainstorm activities or ways you would do that, and then have a team that's responsible for doing those things throughout the year. So literally look at a year-long calendar and plot out all the little things. Some can be little micro elements and projects. Some could be a longer team trip, but get the plan on the schedule for the whole year and get teams that are actually responsible and want to do and promote those things. And they tend to start with HR teams, top management, but they can also be those people that are the connectors in your organization, the people that people go to. So get those in place and form those teams.
Okay. And we're going to now talk about how work actually gets done.
Yeah, absolutely, Tim.
Something we don't necessarily think about. It sounds obvious, but
we don't think about it. And this ties to me really, really closely to onboarding. Number one, get your manuals and SOPs upgraded and in place. These are no fun to do. They're not easy to write. They're not easy to write in a usable, understandable manner. But what research shows us is that people need to know what their job is. They need to know how to do it. They need to know how to use the tools to do it. People ultimately don't like ambiguity. People do like being given freedom to try things in their own way, to fail, to make mistakes, if they're getting the right feedback. But as you're going to hire quickly, you absolutely want to be arming those incoming people with information. You want them to, as quickly as possible, be able to access not only information from their coworkers and managers, but be able to look at a manual and know how to do it, to read how to do it, to
Are there any
know how to...
more fun ways of doing it than via a manual? Because I know from experience, I've been in companies where we've
Sure.
had all these manuals and SOPs, and when you start in a job and someone plops a big manual on your desk and says, "Read this. This is this is how we do things." It's kind of, again, it's not really a fun way of taking that information on board. So, have you had experience of any more sort of enjoyable ways of getting that information across rather than just giving someone a manual?
Yeah, Tim, great question. And we all know that people learn in different ways too. So
Yeah.
when you mix in language, so let's say we're working in English, and that might be a lot of employees' second, third, or fourth languages. Sometimes some people are kinesthetic. Some people want to do things with their hands. They want to watch a video. They maybe want to do role plays. Other people actually want the written word, or they want the written word to back things up. So you don't just want the manual. Maybe you want some e-learnings. Maybe you want some in-person sessions with people who do the same job as them to coach and train them on certain things. Maybe you want those people to be coached one-on-one, virtually or in person, after they've read the little training manual. You can do it with training across countries with groups led by an expert, but I would suggest doing it in a combination of those ways. So mixing some of the onboarding activities, which could be done virtually or in person, mixed with some videos and e-learnings, mixed with a little bit of manual, mixed with some mentorship. You want to combine them so that people hear the same thing in multiple ways, in multiple times, and so that they get the opportunity to learn it in the different ways that best speak to them. Did I answer your question?
That does. Very good answer.
Okay. Yeah. So I think taking this opportunity when you don't have as many travelers on the ground, you're not necessarily as busy as you usually are. I understand with reduced teams at the moment, you might still be swamped. Maybe this is a time though to look at investing a little bit in somebody or finding a team member that can help write some of this stuff. But just like a job description, I think is crucial before you hire. Some people will argue it's not. If you can't define what a person is going to do and their responsibilities in a JD, you shouldn't be hiring. The same to me, if you're unable to put down how to do the job and do that hard work, how are you ever really going to train it in a different format or expect someone to really know how to do the job if you're unable to define it yourself? So they don't necessarily need to read the book, but you should get it down there for the people that do want to see it. And that should serve as the base for every other mode of training that you design.
And we're going to talk about tools as well. What tools you use to get work done within your company. And again, that's something that now most travel companies are very quiet at the moment. Now is the time where they can look at the tools they use as well.
Yeah, Tim, and I know that eRoom has some really great solutions for this, but I've been lucky enough the last little while to be consulting in some different companies, not just travel companies. And the one common kind of mistake I see is that if companies didn't have cloud suites, e.g. Microsoft Teams or Google Suite or whatever it was in place before COVID, they now are getting them in place. But what we don't end up doing is actually training people how to really utilize those tools. Okay, we'll make sure they know how to use the word processor and the spreadsheet and use the video meet function. But if you're going to spend all that money on those tools, why not equip your people to use the most important 8 or 10 things, to really utilize them? And you're wasting time. I see the biggest one is how to work on common files, how to share files effectively. So my point is, if you're going to go to the trouble to spend the money on the platforms, spend a little bit more time on money on equipping those training systems, getting the people in place to train those systems, or just the systems that can be watched online or via video to actually make use of those tools effectively. Because going back to the manuals and the SOPs and the onboarding and this kind of training, if you're going to hire people, great people, and you envision them doing great work, if you are unwilling to spend the time and effort to do the great onboarding, to help them know their job and how to do their job and how to use the tools to do their job, if you're unwilling to do those things properly, you have to admit to yourself that you can therefore not expect them to do the quality of work that you maybe want them to do or they could do. So you got to front load this stuff. It's not just going to happen magically. And when we looked at that employee lifetime value, if you do these things and train these tools, that's what gets people performing more quickly, doing great work sooner, and then continuing to do great work for longer.
Now, we're talking to a lot of travel companies at the moment, and we're finding that optimism is returning. We're also finding that those companies that are still standing and expect to still be standing once travel recovers are actually doing this now. They're actually looking at investing in technology, whether it's eRoam or other systems. Apart from dedicated travel software, obviously, what other tools do you think travel companies should be looking at? Because we know the travel industry is generally, we all know the travel industry can be a little bit old-fashioned when it comes to technology, particularly tour operators and DMCs and companies like that. So what other tools, apart from reservation systems, booking systems, do you think travel companies should be looking at?
Well, I mean, good question, Tim. And the real simple one are tools we all know about, but I really am preferential to Google Suite. And I don't work for Google, but you know what? Those tools work really well. The days of people having to send, an attached file back and forth to one another, that no longer needs to be the case. You just have remote teams all working on the same pitch or proposal all at once. So something like a Microsoft Teams or a Google Suite or equivalent is key to me. You want people to be able to build itineraries, cost things out, work on these files together in real time. You want really good communication tools and protocols, which I have noted here. And I want to go back to communication protocols, but also some tools like Miro. Miro is one, and there's other boards, but what these are like brainstorming boards. So imagine being in the office together and everyone rocks up to the whiteboard and writes ideas or sticks Post-it notes on the wall. You can use some tools like Miro, and there's a whole suite of them out there that basically allow people remotely to look at a common board and to put stickers and to write comments and stick virtual Post-it notes on board, so that when you're leading development sessions or just team brainstormings, people can be using a few of these tools. And I think you don't want to overwhelm it. So going back to communication protocols, actually set the expectations. And this is really part of your culture, but how do we communicate? Like, when we meet, what needs to be in place to meet? When we meet, do we turn our cameras on or do we keep them off? The answer is keep your cameras on. That keeps people engaged. But also, if you receive an email, how long should we have before we have to reply? Or if we're sending a chat, do we do that online or WhatsApp or Telegram or Signal? Establish that one tool. You want people to minimize the tools, use a few tools, use them regularly, use them effectively, and ensure that everyone knows what they are so that you don't have messages lost all over the place.
Sure. Okay. And we've talked about how work happens and what tools are used to make that work happen. One thing that's changed a lot over the last year and a bit, thanks to COVID, is where work happens.
Yeah, absolutely, Tim. And I find this possibly the most fascinating part of COVID is I think most companies knew that they had to start giving some flexible work hours and options to work from home once in a while. And some of us have been brave enough to do it. Again, this kind of thing requires training. I'm a bit of an older guy now, 47. And we were taught, growing up that you go to an office, you sit in a room with everyone and you do work. You need to kind of retrain people now on working remotely. And this great COVID experiment has made us all do that. But I think there's some opportunities and wins for owners. One, the days of needing to have 100% of seats for all employees in an office are over. Forget it. And that's good for you, to save some money. You're going to have to take some of that savings and spend it on some of these people systems we've talked about, or offset people's home costs. But also, you're now going to be able to legitimately offer that as a bit of a perk. Hey, if you work here, you don't have to come downtown all the time. And the other thing you might want to consider in large urban centers are satellite offices. So I'm in Bangkok like you, Tim. Let's think about this city where people can waste multiple hours a day. Maybe you hire 4 desks in 2 or 3 of the outskirt areas that people come into to meet once or twice a week. So you're getting this combination of maybe some people working remotely all the time because of their situation, maybe 3 days a week, but then going into the central office, it's now only 50% of the size, or a satellite office. Also remembering that remote work actually isn't good for everyone. I mean, some people are extroverts and they want to be around other people. Don't penalize them. Actually, you need to be giving them that space when it's safe enough to be in a spot together. But conversely, a lot of people, especially in the developing world, live in small accommodations, maybe in cramped quarters with a lot of other family members. So actually being home, working remotely isn't good for them. So giving those people the opportunity, without having to explain their situation, the opportunity to be able to regularly go into work. And then that comes down to cost, is remembering a lot of employees, you force them to work at home. Now their electric costs have gone up, their aircon costs have gone up, their internet costs have gone up. So maybe you take some of that office rental savings and creatively give people a little money to offset those things. And again, you'll see meetings, I've put it here again, but these are the great time wasters. And this remote work environment gives us the opportunity to, I think, really capitalize on maybe more short meetings, but having them really defined, how you meet, some of those cultural norms and rules that, hey, when we show up for a meeting, let's double check and triple check who really needs to be there and exactly how long they'll be, and ultra clear agendas and someone managing the meetings and our cameras on. And again, that ties into that culture plan and strategy. It's all part of that larger thing. But I think there's some real opportunities for cost savings, working in different spaces and giving people a little more flexibility. But we're no longer going to be sitting everyone in the same room.
Yeah, I think that's good news, particularly for new companies or small companies. Because obviously when you start a new company, office space is one of the big expenses. Certainly for smaller startup companies. So I think the whole new culture of working from home is a big help, particularly at the moment where, when companies, I know a lot of companies here who are kind of mothballed and have moved out of their offices, and when they restart, they're probably not going to have the budget to go back to renting, whole floor of office space. So I think being able to be flexible and have a lot of people working from home is good for the staff as well as for the company.
And I keep droning on about training. I just want to accentuate that training doesn't have to be that traditional view of training, a person standing up and everyone looking at their PowerPoint for 2 hours. It can be just in short mentorship, short discussions, but all these behaviors of how we work and where work is done, that needs to be trained again. It just needs to be spelled out and identified so that everyone knows the rule of the game. I kind of say when everyone plays football, everyone playing football knows how the game works and they agree on that and how the game is played. It doesn't need to be complicated about where we work and how we work, but somebody needs to make sure the rules are identified and shared.
Sure.
So
why do we avoid this work? Now, you mentioned before that, there's the putting together things like manuals and SOPs and training programs and things is something that companies avoid, partly because it's time consuming. It's not the most exciting thing in the world. So here are some reasons you've got for why companies do avoid doing this.
Yeah, I think before, say, pre-COVID, one, this kind of stuff doesn't bring in that immediate revenue, right? It's not like sales or selling a trip or forming a partnership that you just see immediately. Okay, this is going to be worth $50,000. All these people things we've talked about, it's difficult to attach a direct, dollar or pound or whatever value to them.
Yeah.
So they're easy to ignore. And generally we throw resources at these kind of things when business is great and we have money to burn. But also, I don't think a lot of people are suited to doing this kind of semi-murky, opaque kind of work that can, as it says, be difficult and boring. Myself, for whatever reason, I enjoy doing it. I enjoy making sure things are very clear. There's also no clear best way. I mean, you Google any of these things I've talked about, you're going to find 10 different opinions. Find one that's best for you. And the success rollout on a lot of these, especially culture, takes a long time. It's not a one-day win or a 1 month win. But I think if multiple things are put together over 6 months or 12 months, you can start to see the impact. And again, it's tricky to measure the ROI. You can measure the ROI on some of this stuff. You can measure productivity. You can measure satisfaction and engagement levels through surveys. But it can be a little more tricky than that, straight up sales or partnerships and so forth. But it's important work.
And finally, you're going to look at what you call the multiplier effect, about what happens when you combine several of these initiatives we've talked about.
Yeah, Tim, I think now this doesn't just apply to people systems. It applies to pretty much every system and process in a company. But companies that start to have trouble, it's usually not one thing, right? It's not two things, it's multiple things. So I believe we've talked about 5 or 6 areas here today. And so what I'm going to say is that if you have 1 or 2 of these items not going very well or not in place, you can cope, you can get by. The wheels will keep turning. If you end up with like 2, 3 or more, of these systems that don't exist or are not working well, they add up to more than just 3. So each one kind of multiplies against the other, and you have an exponential factor. And that's where companies tend to fail, or they tend to recruit poorly, and they don't onboard well, and people never understand their job or how to do it, and they never really perform well, and they don't stay long, and they leave quickly. So the point is, if you can look at these areas and you can get even 3 of the 5 working pretty well, they're going to multiply with one another and really excel your performance and your people systems and your intention and engagement. Conversely, if you have 2 to 3 of these that are non-existent or not working well, you're never going to get over a certain performance hump, no matter how hard you try. So just a quick,
you're going to look at some easy, you're going to look at some easy, quick wins that companies can start doing now.
Yeah. So at the beginning, I said, don't try and remember all this. I really think the key with anything you're learning is to just try and pick out 1 or 2 things. So here's just kind of key things to me that can help improve your people systems. And a lot of these really don't cost a lot of money. They need someone to put time in it, but start just by looking at that redefined and restructured roles. The company you are now is definitely not the company you were 14 months ago, nor is it going to be the company you're going to be in 6 months. So what should that new structure look like? Who should be those first key hires? How should they then interact with the existing teams? And who should be the second and third layer of hires? And when will that need to happen? Hire slow. You'll have to hire a bit faster than normal, but don't be scared to release people. If that fit isn't right in the first month or 2, let people go, because again, bad hires can be up to 250% of an annual salary cost. Make sure you get that employee value proposition in place. And this can be a fun exercise. It can be a nice break from the storm we're all dealing with. Is get a few existing team members together and actually brainstorm, have a fun afternoon. Like, what makes this place us? What makes it fun? Why would people want to be here? What can we offer people? And define that. And then you can use it in recruitment. Think about those multiple working spaces. How can that benefit you on a cost savings basis, but also be appealing to people to not have to waste so much time commuting? And also, again, making it possible for the people that do want to be in an office to be there. Get those manuals, those SOPs, those JDs updated and in place. Again, you don't have to force people to read all the pages, but they should be the basis of knowledge that anyone can go to, and that every other training and knowledge sharing system comes from. And then have those teams and systems in place to share those onboarding items, to share the tools. You got to think about who's going to do it. You got to make sure there's dedicated people, that at least part of their time is dedicated to this. Get a culture plan in place. Get people that want to be part of that culture team. Revisit those values. Get it down to just a few values that actually mean something, that people understand, that they can connect to the mission and vision and what they're doing. So the point here is, I think, invest now and you're going to win in the future.
And when you say invest, there's not really a huge amount of financial investment involved in this, is there really? We're not asking companies to go out and spend, thousands and thousands of dollars on this stuff.
Now, if you could punch the next slide there, Tim, it'll segue perfect into this. So
okay.
It really is saying, yeah, now is the time. Pretty much everything I have touched on, this is the perfect time. COVID is the perfect time. And now I realize that we're all working in smaller teams. We've probably had to let a lot of people go. They're furloughed, but put in a bit of time for yourself and some of your existing team members to start working on a couple of them, because this is the perfect time to get this house in order. The other thing is, if you invest a bit of money, whatever is doable by your company, and somebody that can maybe spearhead some of these, even some of your people will be able to work or willing to work on reduced salaries. Everybody, I think, in travel is well familiar that almost no one's making full salary. So think of it as an investment. If you want to succeed and you want to quickly be able to bring people in during rebound, know the company, know the job, know their role, know their purpose, know how to use the tools, invest in someone now to help you get these things in place. And that is going to pay huge in the next 6 to 12 to 24 months. So now is the time.
Sure. Excellent. I think everybody's probably got quite a lot of things to take away with them from today. A lot to think about. I know, Scott, in your role as a people development specialist, there's a few things you can help people with if people want to get in touch with you.
Yeah, absolutely. One, I'm just happy to talk about any of these. You can find me on LinkedIn, Scott Coates. Tim, you can share my email. Tim's also going to be able to share some links to some of the articles that I've read to get some of this information. But I really think I can lend help with systems development, getting SOPs in place, these culture teams and plans, training and development solutions, be it e-learning, be it in-person exercises, online ones, executive team coaching, individual coaching. And then I've been working in tourism for 20 years. So anything around tourism strategy and leadership, I'm happy to entertain ideas and see where there's possible synergies.
Great. Thanks, Scott. Before we move on to Q&A, if you've got any questions, can you think about them, and we'll address those in a couple of minutes. I see we've got a question there already. Just a quick note about eRoam. I think most of you who are in this webinar have attended our webinars before, so you know who we are at eRoam. We're a travel technology solution for travel agents, tour operators, travel advisors, DMCs. We've got a huge marketplace of over millions and millions of travel products in over 100,000 worldwide destinations. We pull in travel content from all over the world, from people like Hotel Beds, people like Sabre, from Viator, Mr. Fly, and so on. And we also enable DMCs to put their own content in eRoam, so they can push their own content out to their travel agent clients and cut down their normal quoting time, hours or days, into just minutes. I'm just going to quickly show you a video for 2 minutes. It's just got to load up from YouTube, so bear with me just for a couple of seconds. This short video explains exactly how eRoam works. If it's going to load.
Meet Jack and Jill. They have an appointment to visit their travel advisor today. They plan to book their round-the-world dream holiday. Jack explains his priorities are snorkeling and diving in Africa, Australia, and Thailand. Jill's priorities are visiting the hill tribes, shopping on Rodeo Drive, and taking the train across the Rocky Mountains. The advisor prepares and shows the proposed itinerary to Jack and Jill, which they agree to buy and get handed their tickets. Wrong. Let's take a look behind the scenes at what really happens and all the travel professionals involved in making a booking like this. First, the travel advisor conducts a consultation with the clients on where they want to travel and their requirements. From this information, the advisor checks availability and creates an itinerary with flights, hotels, and activities. This can take hours as they review from the millions of hotels, motels, guest houses, and hostels that are showing in the marketplace, and then working out what is best suited to Jack and Jill. With eRoam, the travel advisor can find, in minutes, curated content displaying the best hotels for your clients. Next, the advisor looks at the availability of over 1,000 airline, train, and bus operators to see which offer the best deal based on Jack and Jill's requirements. Finally, the advisor needs to add from the curated content the best tour operators, DMCs, and wholesalers, like snorkeling on the Great Barrier Reef, cruising down the Mekong River to Luang Prabang, or a first-class suite on the famous Rocky Mountaineer train. This can take suppliers several hours, and in most cases, days, to respond to the advisor. With eRoam, this can be done in minutes. Once the advisor has all this information, they can then create a quote and proposed itinerary. This step normally takes a further 2 or more hours, but eRoam does this instantly. The eRoam Travel Operations Project is a partnership of eRoam Technologies and Travel Operations, powered by Microsoft Dynamics.
Okay, so that gives you a little quick overview of what eRoam is. eRoam's available from just $59 per month. If you go for our premium package, it's available for just $15 per user per month. So very, very affordable. So if you're a tour operator or travel agency thinking about implementing new technology, then please get in touch with us and we'll be happy to give you a demo and a free trial. Any questions, anybody? I think we've got a question in the Q&A box here from Albino Veneto. If your team is on unpaid leave, how can a business owner engage with them with culture and people development? How would you deal with that?
Yeah, good question, Albino, and thanks for that. Yeah, if people are on unpaid leave, it's tough to ask them to do work, but I would find ways to every week just send them something that's happening. Send them a little note to everyone. Hey, everyone, hope you're doing well. I did this week, or I discovered this, or here's a photo of something I did. Do you have a photo of something you did? The revisiting values could be a perfect one. You don't want to ask people to do work, but you could actually send a photo of a great event you had in the past and say, hey, you know what? We're rethinking our values in these times. Here they are. What do you think? What do they mean to you? And see what you get back. You could even do some informal surveys on Google Forms or something, asking them, letting them know, hey, this will be anonymous, but I'm really wondering, when we rebound back and hopefully you come back to work for us, what did you like about working here? What didn't you like about working here? What can we do to make your job better or make it more appealing? And again, really stress that these surveys are anonymous. Don't bug them too much, but every couple of weeks, if you did something like this, asking them a question that actually helps you know more about the association with your team members, and maybe starting with that values exercise or surveys. And then again, you could even say, hey, everyone, I'd love to have a coffee with all of you. Monday, I'll be online at 10 a.m. if anyone can turn up for a coffee, and let's chat about such and such, or say, tell me about the most exciting thing you've done since we've all been apart. Pretty simple answer, but they don't have to be too complicated. I don't think they should take too much of people's time, but it's also a good opportunity to learn and elicit some good information from people. Albino, I hope I answered your question.
Thanks, Scott. Another one from Lauren. We all agree that identifying and retaining top staff and top management is hard to identify those people, and it's hard to retain them. Why do we see so often that excellent individuals are not kept on by their companies, end up leaving, or end up being let go? Why does that?
Yeah, good
why
question.
do we see that happen quite a lot?
And I'm not sure if this is a question about my personal situation, but I'll start it by kind of giving my personal situation. Is look, when this all started to happen, I'm really grateful to Exo Travel for the opportunity, and it was a great time I had working there. And everything I'm sharing with you today, I know because of working with them, and I was given a lot of trust and autonomy. That said, we also had to very carefully look at this emerging crisis and think about how deep do you cut and how soon. And of course, no one knew how long it would last. And I think they made some smart decisions. And in my particular company's case was to cut maybe a little deeper than some and a little earlier, thinking that it might go long, and it has. Now, you can't keep everyone, and that's that case. The other thing is every company is different. Every situation is different. I think you have to look at that budget. You have to look at your burn rate, how long you can keep going on existing funds, what funds you can borrow, and how you're going to get there. And then just those crucial roles that you absolutely must have to get you to the finish line and get you through something like this. So often people is the overlooked department, because again, as we mentioned, it's not the one that immediately brings in, pounds and dollars and cents and stuff like that. But hopefully I've convinced some of you now the importance of having some of this work done and systems in place, because it does lead to employees that do better work, stay longer, deliver more value. But often the people systems, the HR teams, the training teams, those are the ones that are easy to cut, because they just, on paper, they don't bring in direct revenue. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I think in this unprecedented situation is every company has to make some difficult decisions, including my former employer, and I think they did the right thing.
Good answer. Thanks, Scott. Well, we're nearly up to the hour mark now, so I think we'd better finish there. Big thanks to everyone who's attended. I hope you found it useful. We've had some good comments from Steve and Albino saying they've found it very useful, so thanks for that. Big thank you to Scott for joining us and for spending a lot of time putting your presentation together. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. It's a pleasure. I always enjoy doing stuff with you. And thank you to everyone that took the time to join. And again, feel free to contact me if you'd like to chat about any of this. I find it really fascinating.
Yes, we'll be sending you up a follow-up email. I'll put Scott's contact details on there as well. So look out for that. That'll be in your inbox probably tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon. And I'll also send you a link to the recording of this event if there's anything that you want to know. So again, thank you. Keep a lookout for future webinars. We do these every month. Yeah, sorry, Steve saying please share, no problem. Yeah, we do these every month, so we'll be doing another one probably in either late May or early June. So keep an eye out for that. We wish you all well with your businesses. Let's hope the industry recovers soon. And thank you for joining us. Thank you.